think it might be happening. Aha! Alright. I finally got it.
If you ever want to do a dry run, like during the week, of something new that you're trying out, just let me know. I can, you know, help you out. And, you know, get online, see if it's working with you.
For sure. Yeah. I mean, this is kind of a weird one. I'm trying to stream it to multiple platforms at once. And so basically when I exited the meeting earlier because my camera decided that it was just not going to use the virtual camera, when I exited the meeting, it had your face as the streaming. So I had to reset the stream, and it's all goofy. It's a very it's a network, man, for sure. All right. Well, off the technology issues. How is everybody? Pretty good? Pretty good? Awesome. Okay. So, today we are going to talk about high register tone. That is what we voted for in the group. So we're going to go ahead and get started. I need to grab my slides real fast because I am just all over the place today. So I do apologize if I'm a little scattered. All right. So welcome to Flute Reboot, our flute practice. Today we're going to talk about high register tone. And I know those of you in the current Zoom meeting, you all know who I am, but for those of you that are watching, actually before I talk about this, I do want to say I posted in the chat on all the streaming platforms. If you are watching from the streaming platforms, I will not be answering questions in real time. You will need to come to the Zoom meeting here. So click the link, join the Zoom meeting, all that good stuff. So who am I? I am Cassie. I'm a wedding and event musician. I'm a flutist. I like to specialize in the flute restart. I'm an online lesson teacher and former music tech specialist, although it doesn't seem like it today. Mindfulness mentor, so I really try to focus on, bringing mindfulness into practice and preventing burnout. So that's a lot of what I do, and that's why I'm really passionate about, getting people started back with their instruments after a hiatus, because I think a lot of those things come into play. So today we're going to talk about high register tone. We're going to talk about the airstream. We're going to talk about lung support. We're going to talk about things that we can do to improve. And we're going to talk about resources, books, gadgets, all that good stuff that can help you improve your high register tone. So first and foremost, with the airstream, I think that it's important to note that changes should be slight. So we have this tendency to want to really jump up and down with our airstream in terms of the speed, in terms of the angle. We want to make it drastic. But the reality is that small movements are what's going to get you where you need to go. And making small changes, making those small movements takes a lot of muscle definition here. So it takes time, it takes a lot of practice to really get smooth with that. And so don't beat yourself up, be patient with yourself. It will take a little bit of time to work those muscles and build that tone. So when we are working on our upper register, we want to use the lower lip to angle our airstream more up and across. So remember when we talked about low register tone, and we like to use the upper lip to shape the airstream to go down almost to the floor. And I realize that you're not actually going that It's not quite that drastic, but it's a good visual, right? Going straight down towards the floor. But with higher register, and I'm talking, from, I'd say like C above the staff on, you're really bringing that airstream up and across, okay? We want to, with our lips and our mouth, our proverbial mouthpiece here, we want to shape and sculpt the air so that it is going up and across. Yep, Wendy, I love that. We just talked about this yesterday. So a good exercise would be to blow to hit your wrist. Okay, blow as though you're blowing into your flute and aim it at your wrist. You should feel it directly on your wrist. And then move it up to the tips of your fingers and back down. All without moving your head. And you should feel it, right? You should feel it going up and down. And if you feel it all over your hand all the time, then we need to focus. When you focus the air, we need to close the embouchure just a little bit. Up and down. So yeah, it's a slightly more closed embouchure, but we don't want to pinch either. So if you're feeling tightness, if you're feeling, we can actually, as a matter of fact, when I was learning my high notes, I had this tendency to almost buzz. Like I would go so tight that I would, and we don't want that. Yep, so we've got to loosen, even opening the aperture a little bit from there. Like I said, these are minute changes to what you've likely been doing already. So remember, those teeny tiny little changes take a lot longer than a big drastic change, right? Because it's harder. So I like to say that we use cool air for upper register, warm air for lower register. I think a lot of that really just has to do with the air speed, more so than actually producing cool air, if that makes sense. But so it's slightly faster, so it's going to feel cooler on your hand. If you were to blow on your hand, and you're thinking about high register, it's going to feel cooler than low register. And that mostly has to do with the speed. So it's slightly faster air. So we don't want to jawbone in and out. We've talked about this with the low register. We don't want to do this. They talk a lot about that, and there's actually a whole chapter in the Simple Flute. Mike, I think you said you've read this one, right? Or you've read parts of it. There's a whole chapter on jawboning, so that's what he refers to it as. We're kind of going. And the reason why we don't want to do that is because you can actually hurt yourself. It's the same kind of thing with those of us that have, TMJ or grind our teeth at night. We can do the same kind of thing to that hinge if we're going in and out when we change our register. So we're using our lips, not our jaw. Okay? So that's why our lips can't be tight. Our lips have to be loose so that we can make those changes, right? If our lips are tight like this, it's a lot harder to make those changes without moving the jaw. But if our lips are loose, yeah. I'm gonna stop making a fool of myself on the internet now. All right. So try not to jawbone in and out. I like to use the vowel shapes and E. E is kind of difficult though. Remember that we don't want to close this off. We don't want to pinch here and go E. We want to go E like a singer would. E. While keeping the throat open. E. And even keeping, we've talked about this, and I know I just said this to you last night, Wendy, the baby carrots in between your back teeth. So visualizing baby carrots in between your back teeth and going E, E, while keeping the throat open. And that can be a really helpful way to jump registers, right? To go from low to high. If we go O or I, inside of our mouths. Now, you can sing that while you play too. Like I said, I think I've said this a few times that I'm not the best singer and player at the same time, but it's really good for you. And so if you wanted to do that, if you wanted to do the as you are trying to do those octave jumps, that's a great way to train yourself to do that. So, no pinching. We stay relaxed. We keep our lips supple and not. So, I said this earlier. You can tell with me when I start getting tension because I have dimples. So, when I start to bring tension into my playing, those immediately just go super deep, right? Whereas they're still there, but they're not super deep. So, all right. And for those of you that also have dimples, that's a good indicator too if you practice in the mirror. Lung support. So obviously, high register takes air. It takes less air than some of your lower registers. It takes less air than playing like an alto flute or a bass flute, but it still takes air. It still requires diaphragm support in order to sound beautiful and not pinched. Again, we need to make sure that we're giving it enough air. So engaging the diaphragm with our ha, ha, ha articulation. So as we're playing, we're going ha, ha, ha. And I like to do this with scales, actually. So I'll pick whatever scale I'm working on that day, and I will run ha, 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 ha. Doesn't sound pretty, but it works. Sorry, I'm just checking to make sure that my stream is still live periodically. So, and then also a reminder, I've said this a few times already. I know I repeat a lot of the same things over and over again, but they're important. Releasing tension in the throat. Now, we can do this a few different ways. We've talked about singing and playing before, humming and playing, that sort of thing. I also like to just, if you've ever meditated, if you've ever done like a body scan before, I find those working on those things outside of flute to be so helpful in flute because it forces me to pay attention, right? If I actively I'm playing through my scales and I'm starting to lose myself, and just kind of daydream and whatnot, bringing myself back and saying, okay, I'm going to scan my body now. And I'm going to start at the top of my head. Do I feel tension? Eyebrows, do I feel tension? Eyes, do I feel tension? Ears, do I feel tension? All the way down, I get to my throat, and almost, I'm going to say 99% of the time, if I am doing an active scan of myself while I am playing, I'm going to get to the throat, and I'm going to immediately go, oh. And so actively opening up, especially right here, actively opening up and just letting go, because we're going to want to compress. But you can see it. Yes.
I will, on occasion, make a little like a little click out of my throat.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know; it's hard to describe, but I will hear that, especially when I'm playing vibrato. Is that tension in the throat, or do you think there's something else going on?
I'm trying to think of I feel like that would be tension without being able to hear. So it's almost like a cough, or just like a.
It's like that almost.
Like a.
Like a little.
I've done that before. And I do think a lot of that has to, because I mean, that's literally your throat coming together and then coming back apart. So I would say yes, that is likely a result of some tension going on there. So, when you feel that, taking a second, pausing and going, and even taking like a deep yawn breath will help with that. So that's one way that you can release some of the tension in the throat too is, and I'm sorry, I am totally going to yawn if I do that again, and it has nothing to do with you guys and everything to do with me. But if it forces you to yawn, you're doing it right, right? So, all right. Let's jump ahead. So, ways that we can improve our high register. So, doing long tones and working your way all the way up. So, we talk a lot about long tones. What we don't talk enough about is how to actively do long tones, right? We tend to do them really passively. I have this conversation with students all the time where we kind of just run through it, right? Because it's what we're supposed to do. I did that forever, where I was just like, okay, cool, I did my long tones, I warmed up. Well, what we really need to be doing is active listening. And I break this down to myself like I'm in kindergarten. We're putting our listening ears on, and as a matter of fact, okay, side note, I do this with my younger students. You guys will notice that I have little hats and all kinds of stuff on my flutes all the time. If I have taught a younger student that day, one of these is going to be on. And the reason is because I give all of my younger students little hats and we put them on, and this is our this is our concentration, right? Every time we put the hat on, it's time to concentrate and time to play and time to listen, all that good stuff. So weirdly enough, it also works for me. Every time I put my little hat on, it's time. It's time for me to focus. So actively doing long tones when we put our little hat on and we go, okay, it's time to active listen. Trying to match the second note to the tone, the color, and the quality of the previous note. So if we're playing a B and we're going up to our C, ba-da, listening for any timbre changes, listening for thinness, listening for, a lot of times you will definitely hear and feel changes, feel being one of the operative words here. You will hear and feel changes from D to E. That's a big one, where you will feel some thinness jump in. And so we go back and we play D to E and we make a slight embouchure change, or we make a slight airstream change, or we make a slight we make a change in the vowel shape that we're using. And we do all those things. I think I just froze. Did I freeze for you guys? No? I just froze on my streaming. Give me just a second here.
You just froze for us.
Okay. Yay. Swapping cameras. I'm back. All right. I just don't have my slides, but it's okay. We'll talk through them. I'm actually almost at the end, so it's fine. All right. Let me pull up my slides so that I can see them now. Okay. Yeah, so as we're going through our long tones, we're listening. If we hear a tone color change, we talked last week. Do you guys want me to go back and kind of demonstrate yellow versus purple versus things like that this time around? Or are we good? Yeah. Okay. Well, as we're listening for those color changes, and we want to maintain the same color as we're going all the way through, right? So that we can control that. Same color, same timbre, same overall quality, right? So that's how we actively do long tones, because it's really easy for me to say, hey, Wendy, you're my student. Wendy, go ahead and do some long tones every time you practice. Right? So it's really easy for me to say that, and then you go, okay, well, that's what I'm supposed to do, and you just run through it, and okay, I'm done now. But maybe that warmed you up a little bit, but it wasn't actually a tone practice, right? So instead, we go, okay, I'm going to listen, I'm going to pay attention, I'm going to go listen for those slight quality changes, and they could be teeny tiny. And they often are. So active listening, all that good stuff. That is one of the best ways that you are going to improve your across any register, across any tone. Sorry, I'm getting a little off track. So, don't make drastic changes when working your way up chromatically. Make small changes. Experiment. Make little tiny changes that you can identify when something works. Right? We have this tendency to want to just like do all these big things, right? So I'm going to change my airstream, and I'm going to change the vowel shape, and I'm going to change this, and I'm going to change that. Make little tiny changes as you're working chromatically, and note those things. Write them down. Note them mentally, whatever you need to do, but little tiny changes at a time so that you can actively see what worked. Because if you make a huge change from D to E, you're not going to know what actually was the thing that changed, right? And we obviously, when we're moving through quick passages, we can't make those huge changes like that, right? So it's learning what little tiny changes do the trick. Experiment with the vowel shapes, right? E. Some people will argue with E, but I think that, again, if you go E and you clam up and you close up here, then you're absolutely right. You're just inviting in throat tension. But if we keep in mind the throat, E, keeping the throat open, E is a great vowel shape for upper register. Release tension in the lips. We're not doing smiley face, right? We don't smiley face embouchure. We don't quite frown either, but we let the corners of the lips come naturally down. I'm a natural frowner. It's just who I am. They call it RBF. Like that's who I am. And so that's natural to me. But if you're a natural smiler, actively try to almost frown. Let your jaw hang loose. Baby carrots in between the back teeth. If Denise is watching this right now, she's probably laughing because she's the one that taught me that. And we want to work towards a strong and open tone that is not pinched. So we do that by keeping all of this open. We keep our mouthpiece because we are the mouthpiece, right? We are the reed. We are we are the brass mouthpiece, whatever. We are that by keeping all of this open, loose, and not pinching, not clamming up. Work to increase the space between your teeth and your lips. Again, Denise, if she's watching, she likes to refer to this as lengthening the tube. So if we think of the mouthpiece being the tube all the way down our throats, right? We are lengthening that tube by bringing it out here. Making sure we're playing with the wet parts of our lips. That in itself is extending that tube. Does anybody have any questions so far? I just realized I dumped a lot of information on you guys rapidly. So please feel free to stop me. All right. Okay, so things that we can, resources that we can use. There are quite a few fantastic books. However, the Numo Pro. Training you to use your airstream up and down correctly. The Numo Pro is great. These are little tools and trainers that I like to use. So I like to put together 2 coffee stirrer straws. Mine are very colorful because I like colors. Rest them on your bottom lip as though you're playing flute. That's harder to do, but it's a good trainer for working on angling the airstream without jawboning, right? There are a couple of books that are fantastic, including, but not limited to, Trevor Y. Practice Book 1, Tone, the Tone book. This is kind of our, I don't know. I mean, I hate to, like, bring religion into things, but, like, this is our, like, Bible. Like, this is what we do. We will work out of this forever. I will work out of this for the rest of my life, and I'm okay with that. But Book 1, Tone, there is a section on preparing for the high register and then the high register. I would highly recommend starting with the prep for high register. Don't skip the prep. Because he goes through, like the Ravel excerpt that I talked about for purple tone, and he kind of goes through it in different keys and says, okay, play through this, and it's very chromatic in nature. Play through this and, listen for tone changes. Listen for quality changes. And it's a great excerpt. And then there's a couple other little chromatic things that he does in preparation for the high register. Don't skip the prep, whatever you do. The physical flute, as a matter of fact, I think all three of you that I see currently, I think there's more than 3 in here, but all 3 of you that I currently see would really like and benefit from this book if you do not have it already. So this book, it's a little bit Alexander technique-y. So it talks a lot about the body and how the body goes into playing flute, but and it talks about consistent embouchure, particularly in the beginning. So we talk a lot about consistency, maintaining a consistent shape here, as opposed to what we have a tendency to do where we go from very flat and loose to very... I don't know if any of you follow me on Instagram, but there was I know at least one of you follows me on Instagram, but there was a meme that showed up that I kind of had to comment on that showed, like, low register embouchure versus high register embouchure, and it was very much like, this is low, and then this is high. We don't want that, right? So she talks a lot about that in here. The physical flute is fantastic. She talks a lot about Fiona Wilkinson. She talks a lot about how the body plays into good tone. So I like her stuff a lot. Other books that will be very helpful. There is a body mapping for flutists, which is along the same lines. It's not so much exercises with actual flute, but it just talks about, it talks a lot about Alexander technique and how all of that really fits into what we do. I've mentioned this a few times. I have gotten super into Alexander technique as I have gotten older. When I was younger, I thought it was really boring and did not understand why we were learning this, but as I've gotten older and have appreciated the fact that I have hurt myself on a few occasions, and, that my posture and where I hold tension and all that good stuff plays into how well I am playing, plays into my tone, plays into my technique. Body mapping for flutists goes a lot into exactly that. It kind of forces you to look at your body in such a way that you're kind of looking at, like, how you think certain parts of the body affect your flute playing, and then almost debunking it. It's like, okay, well, here's how it actually works. And, looking at, we look at the diaphragm, we look at the throat, we look at the neck, we look, I'm not going to go too far into that. I am in a mood that's going to put me on a tangent. I'm all over the place, guys. I'm so sorry. Other exercises that are less wordy, a little bit more actual exercises. Of course, Taffanel and Gobert, 17 daily exercises. These are yet another that most of us will be playing forever for the rest of our lives. And that's okay. These are not specific to high register, obviously, but they work into all registers. I mean, they're very much scalar, so even though they are geared towards technique, if we are focusing on having good tone throughout them, they are excellent tone exercises as well. And as far as flexibility, jumping up and down and learning to utilize those vowel shapes as we're going up and down. That's a really great place to learn them. And then, of course, orchestral excerpts for the flute. In orchestral repertoire, we have a tendency to play high all the time. And we know why that is, but, unless it's a solo, for the most part, we are playing a lot in that upper register. So, if you're looking for short pieces that I would say are almost etude-like, they're short enough that they could be treated like etudes, this is a great place to be. And this is a lot of our standard repertoire anyway, so I like to treat a lot of these like etudes. It kind of depends, but usually, especially if you're planning on doing any sort of auditions, orchestral excerpts for the flute, this is where you're going to find all of those pieces. Anyway. And if you're already using orchestral excerpts for the flute, by the way, and you have Apple Music and I believe Spotify, there are audio clips to go with each piece where Jeannie Baxtresser talks about each piece and then plays each piece. Fabulous. Absolutely fabulous. And then last but certainly not least, top register studies for flute. I see at least one face that tells me that you recognize this one. And it may have been the bane of your existence at some point or another. They are short etudes. So you'll notice there are 3 on this page. So they're short. And a lot of them are in 6/8. Actually, I'm going to say all of them are in 6/8 or 12/8. It looks like. Yeah. So, these are great for working on not just your tone in the upper register, but also your fingers in the upper register. So, I know, Mike, you had mentioned kind of struggling through playing faster. These are great etudes to work on that, because they kind of force you to move around in some awkward ways. And I mean, at least for me, I do not play these with alternate fingerings. I purposely play these with the correct, first fingering, because it does force you to kind of to deal with some awkwardness, and get quick at it. These do not have a written tempo. However, he encourages you to play them for, a set amount of time and then up the tempo with the metronome every day or every time you feel like you can. He says usually 60 BPM is a good first metronome setting, and then you move on. But this is also good for articulation. This is good for all things, honestly, except low register. So, these are all fabulous. And then, of course, books that you can read. The Simple Flute. It's a good one. Kincaiddiana. Another great one. And then Flute Secrets. I have all the books. I am a book hoarder. So, Flute Secrets, Kincadiana, and the Simple Flute, these all have sections on upper register, dealing with that. So if you want more, any one of these would be great, but I would say particularly the Simple Flute. So, I know I just talked to you guys' ears off for 38 minutes roughly. Do we have questions? Are we feeling okay about all that? I'm just wanting to make sure, see if there were any questions in the group. Nope, no questions in there. Perfect. All right. Well, if we're feeling good about high register, I say we do some long tones in the high register. Doing my classic warm up but not warm up. So we're going to start on B above the staff, and we're going to work our way up. So da da hold, da da hold, da da hold. And again, listen to the first note, make the first note beautiful, but then make the second note match it. All right? Active ears, because the turtle is on my flute. And deep down, I am a 6-year-old in a, flute teacher's body. All right. Keep all this open. See, now for me, I just heard E flat to E natural. I heard a character change, right? So it went kind of thin, and that's normal for that spot. So we make an adjustment. We make an adjustment with a small adjustment with the lips, or with the shape of the cavity here, or releasing tension in the throat, and we do it again. See, and I changed the cavity. I made sure that I was more open, and that worked well. Another character change. So I changed my airstream angle. Lordy. Alright, now I'm just going to go up to G because honestly I am tired, friends. And when I am tired, I don't play as well. And I know that. So I'm going to give myself some grace, as you all should too. I will never stop screaming that. Okay, so the next thing that I would like to do, actually, let's put the flute down. We have a little bit more time today. Normally we've been doing a lot. So I would like to have you close your eyes. And I would like to have you breathe in through your nose. But I want you to create some pressure in the back of your throat so that you can almost hear yourself breathing. So It's almost like you're snoring, but not quite. Does that make sense? So this is less a flute activity, more of a mindfulness activity. This is called Ujjayi breath. Or ocean breath. And that's the idea, is that it sounds like an ocean. One of the reasons why I wanted you to do that is because it kind of forces you to feel a little bit of an exaggeration of that tension back here, right? So if we're able to make that waves-like sound here, it's because we've created some tension here. So as we feel that, we can let it go. Right? So create it again. Now let it go. By breathing out of your mouth. Now yawn. Okay. You did it right. Yay! I always tell my students when we do that, I'm like, if you yawn, I'm not going to be offended because I'm probably going to yawn too while we're doing it. All right. Let's grab our flutes again. Now we're going to go low. Well, we're going to start at the C above the staff and we're going to work our way down. But we're just going to do a slow chromatic, okay? So we're not doing the long tones where we go da da da. We're just gonna go da 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 da. As low as you can go. I'm gonna go down to low C. So we're gonna start at the C above the staff. We pay attention to how we're changing, right? And we're paying attention to, as we are descending or ascending, how the character is changing. So are we sounding light and airy? Are we sounding deep and purple and beautiful and velvety? Are we sounding thin? Are we sounding angry? These are all things that you can note in your playing as you're moving up and down. And those are the things that separate kind of a novice player, right, from a really good player, are those that can manipulate those colors in their tone palette, right? So we start with one color, we start with just kind of this flat tone, right? And then we start adding. We add the yellows, and then we add the deep purples. And so, but when you're adding those colors, we have this tendency to just kind of jump all over the place, right? So as you go from beginner to intermediate, you're kind of just like throwing your paintbrush place all over the place, right? Well, what we want to do as we're stepping into being more advanced flutists is learning to control those colors, learning to, identify those colors and play with them across the entire scale. So not just improving, yes.
I wonder if you could like play different colors.
Yeah. Yeah, actually, I'm gonna... Give me just a second. I will do that. I am going to... We were just talking about the preparation for high register. So I'm going to use this excerpt to kind of demonstrate that. So a yellow, to me, I like to picture what Trevor Y has said, where he talks about, the aquarium, the little excerpt, the aquarium, where you think about fish floating around, and it's just kind of very open, and calm, if that makes sense. I hope this will translate well, but so. So to me, that's what I consider to be yellow, very light, open, calm. And then, so like a purple. Whoop. Vibrato that time. That was on me, but it's definitely, to me, purple is darker, more morose, has a little bit more of an edge to it. Did that translate well? Okay. Yeah. So, and Mike, I don't know if you're looking for that. For me, it's on page 18. But I know that it looks like you have a different copy of the book, because I think you've got the newer one than I do. And I feel like... So,
I think it's on 20.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. So if we kind of go back to... So that's a different page, but as far as like my dynamics didn't change, but the character did, right? So the second one was definitely softer, more calm in my opinion, whereas the first one was a little bit more intense, a little bit more, I like to describe these things with feelings, a little bit more morose. So I'm working through the Trevor Y book, really working from book 1. He really invites you to explore those colors. So 10 out of 10, highly recommend it. So yeah, as we're going up and down, just learning, and a lot of that, and I know, Wendy, we do talk a lot about the ear, right? We talk a lot about training our ear to be able to identify those things. Right, the differences between these things in our own playing, and that stuff does take time and conscious effort. So, again, looking back on the being mindful when we're playing, as we're running through those long tones, you can invite yourself to take a second and take pause in between each one and think and really analyze. And say, okay, what does that sound like to me? And did they sound the same? And if they didn't, particularly when they didn't sound the same, making note of that mentally or on a piece of paper and saying, okay, between, B and C, or C and D, better yet, C and D is one that'll get you. Between C and D, there was something changed. Even if you don't know what it was, just saying something changed. Something did not sound the same. And that's kind of one of those things where, again, we're inviting mindfulness into our practice to make us better players, with that active listening, and just saying, I know that even if you don't have the words for it right now, eventually we will be able to label those things, right? We'll be able to label those changes, and you'll know exactly when they happen or what they are. But for now, it's just listening for something. Something is different. So that's my thought on it anyway. It's definitely a process. Learning and understanding and being able to paint with our color palettes it's a process. But once you kind of get a handhold on that, it makes you so much more emotive of a player. So, yeah. Okay, I have just ran super long, and I actually need to jump off 5 minutes earlier than normal. I do apologize. But does anybody have any last minute questions, comments, concerns? Feeling pretty good. Again, I know that I dumped so much information on you guys this time around. Sometimes I do that. Okay. All right. Well, you guys are amazing. Keep it up. Yeah, I don't have anything else for today, but oh, yes I do. Actually, we will not be doing one of these next week. I do have to skip next week because I will actually be out of town, and it's just one of those things where I'm going to be teaching my lessons that this had to be cut. So I'm sorry, guys. Next week I will not be here, but we will pick up the following Thursday like normal and like I never left, okay? All right. Awesome. Thank you so much, guys. Bye.